an alcoholic mother, and a dad who abandoned him at the early age of 6. Donald Dillbeck was placed in several foster homes until age 15. Donald David Dillbeck was born on May 24, 1963. On April 11, 1979, Dillbeck, a 15-year-old high school dropout and runaway, was sitting inside a stolen car at a closed park at a beach in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Someone made a suspicious person complaint about this, and Lee County Deputy Lynn Hall arrived and questioned Dillbeck. While being questioned by Deputy Lynn Hall, Dillbeck ran from the car. The deputy chased Dillbeck on foot and caught him. During the struggle that followed, Dillbeck, only 15 years old at the time, managed to get the deputy's gun and shot and fatally wounded him. Dillbeck was arrested and, on June 6, 1979, sentenced to life imprisonment. On February 7, 1983, Dillbeck attempted to escape prison, but was recaptured the same day. For this, he was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison. He was later given a 25-year mandatory minimum sentence and taken to a lower security facility despite being disciplined multiple times, including attempted assault in 1984 and drinking intoxicants the following year. On June 22, 1990, Dillbeck was working with other prison inmates at a catering function at Quincy Vocational Center in Quincy, Florida. During the event, Dillbeck walked away from the area and eventually ended up in Tallahassee, Florida. Dillbeck stole a paring knife, and on June 24, 1990, less than 48 hours after his escape, he approached a woman named Faye Vann, who was sitting in her vehicle in the parking lot of the Tallahassee Mall. Armed with the knife, Dillbeck attempted to carjack the vehicle entering it, but Vann resisted. He then stabbed Vann repeatedly, causing her death. The vehicle crashed in the mall lot, and Dillbeck fled on foot, chased by a mall security guard. First, reports to 911 were of a vehicle crash, then soon were relayed as a stabbing and a security guard in foot pursuit of the suspect. Dillbeck was subsequently arrested by police a short time later, still armed with the knife, in a backyard of a nearby house. Governor Bob Martinez criticized the incident, ordering tighter custody of inmates and firing the corrections officers involved. The case was reminiscent of Willie Horton being released in 1988 by Michael Dukakis's release programs. Dillbeck's name was the code word for incompetence between Bob Martinez and Lawton Chiles during their political campaigns. His court-appointed lawyer later admitted to Dillbeck's crimes, but tried to save him from the electric chair, but to no avail. Dillbeck was sentenced to die in the electric chair in 1991. At the sentencing, he told the judge, "I'm really sorry for what happened. I wish it didn't, not because I'm standing here, but because it happened. I'm asking for a life sentence, not for my sake, but for my parents' sake," to which his adoptive parents said Dillbeck had been brain damaged and abused. In 1993, the state appeals court awarded $150,000 to the Vann's family, but later overturned it in 1995, saying the state couldn't be held liable for failing to protect the public from prison escapees, and the only duty which existed was a general duty owed to the public not to allow a prisoner escape. The state court did not say, however, if it could be held liable for the acts of prison escapees. Dillbeck was convicted of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and armed burglary and was sentenced to death on March 15, 1991. In addition, He received 2 consecutive life sentences on top of the one he already had. On January 23, 2023, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed Dillbeck's death warrant, scheduling his execution for February 2023. On his last day of life, 32 years after a judge sentenced him to death, Donald Dillbeck woke up early. He went through his normal routine. He visited with his spiritual advisor. At 9:45 a.m., he had his last meal: fried shrimp, mushrooms, onion rings, butter pecan ice cream, pecan pie and a chocolate bar. 12:55 p.m. The U.S. Supreme Court denies petition to stop execution. Dillbeck's attorneys argued that he should be shielded from execution because of a neurological condition caused by being exposed to alcohol before his birth. Dillbeck's biological mother drank as much as a case of beer a day during her pregnancy, according to Tallahassee Democrat coverage of his trial. She continued to abuse him until, at 4 1/2, he was taken into foster care. A couple adopted him as their only child when he was 6. By 6 p.m. on February 23, 2023, 11,932 days after he committed the crime, Dillbeck was executed at Florida State Prison via lethal injection. He was pronounced dead at 6:13 p.m. Dillbeck's last words were an attack on DeSantis, saying, "I know I hurt people when I was young. I really messed up. But I know Ron DeSantis has done a lot worse. He's taken a lot from a lot of people. I speak for all men, women and children. He's put his foot on our necks. Ron DeSantis and other people like him can suck our dicks." In the minutes after the lethal injection procedure began, Dillbeck, covered with a sheet up to his armpits, clenched his jaw and puffed up his cheeks several times. His chest and left arm twitched. At 6:05 p.m., prison workers tapped his eyelashes and grabbed his shoulders, saying, "Hey Dillbeck." He didn't react. As 6:06 turned to 6:07, his mouth fell open, and his body became still. By 6:10, his face grew ashen. A physician checked his eyes and put a stethoscope to his chest before pronouncing him dead. He was 59 years at the time of his execution. A vigil for Donald Dillbeck ended at about 6:20 p.m., as visitor vans were seen leaving the prison. A group of about 60 people from Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Daytona took a bus over to pray outside the church while Dillbeck was being executed. On the other side of the street, 3 people were there in support of his execution. Family members of victim Faye Vann, who Dillbeck stabbed to death in 1990, were among those who witnessed the Dillbeck's execution, and they looked on with stony expressions. They opted not to speak to reporters afterward, but prison system spokeswoman Michelle Glady distributed a written statement from 2 of Vann's children. Dillbeck is the first person executed in Florida since the execution of Gary Bowles in 2019, and the 100th execution since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. Thank you for watching Death Row.